everybody. Today we're going to talk about conflict. But before we get into explaining conflict and talking about how to fix it, let me ask you a question. Answer these questions in your head. Have you ever had an argument or a disagreement with a friend or a not-so-friend? Have you ever exchanged unkind words in the hall with somebody who you don't really get along with very well? Have you ever had a verbal spar with your parents where you wanted to do one thing and they wanted you to do another thing? If your answer to any of these are yes, then you know basically what conflict is. Conflict is when more than one person is involved in a difference in opinion, a difference of viewpoints, a dispute, a clash, and oftentimes the viewpoints or the perspectives are incompatible. They're not the same. It's normal. It happens all the time, and as human beings, we will experience conflict in our lives. The thing we really want to do is figure out how to solve conflict healthily. Now, one thing that we may talk about at some point is bullying. Bullying and conflict are two different things. Bullying is one person with more power on purpose being mean repeatedly to somebody without power. Conflict is two people disagreeing with each other and both say or do things that maybe aren't the nicest. They're different. So what we're going to talk about now is a 3-step process that has some steps in between for how you can solve conflict in your own lives. And if you think about this stuff and you spend time working on it, your relationships will get better and you will have less conflict and you will be less stressed out probably. If you deal with a lot of conflict in your life, you will probably be stressed out. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of the steps for resolving conflict. First, okay, the first part is identify the conflict or identify if there is a conflict. The first thing I have here is called conspiracy theory, which is something that Dr. Brené Brown talks about in her book, Rising Strong. And it is when we make up conflicts or problems in our head based on things that we see in the world. Okay, people send us both verbal and nonverbal signals, and it can be something as small as somebody looks at you and you think that they're looking at you in a mean way, and that means that you then think that they have a problem with you, and then that becomes the source of a conflict, when in all reality there was no conflict until you kind of made up in your head that there was conflict. This happens, trust me. Okay, so the first step is identify what is the problem. Okay? If you're sure that there's a conflict and it's not just in your head, think about step 2 of part 1 is look at yourself. Identify yourself. How do you feel? What are you thinking? And what do you want to happen? Until you can kind of clear up what's going on in your head and you really know the answers to these questions, it's hard to fix whatever's going on. Okay? This part, step 3, is actually the most important part to fixing conflict. Okay? You need to take the other person's perspective. Okay? The word perspective is defined up here. It's a vocab word. It means a perspective is a particular way of viewing a situation. It's a point of view, an outlook, a stand, a stance, and sometimes you'll hear sayings such as seeing the world through somebody else's eyes or walking a mile in somebody else's shoes. It means think about what it is they're experiencing and how they feel about it, and try taking yourself out of the situation. Okay? This is also referred to as empathy, which is a little bit different than sympathy. Empathy is when you can identify with and feel what the other person is feeling and understand that. This empathy is extremely important to solving conflict because you have to be able to understand the other person to be able to fix whatever's going on. Okay? You also need to learn how to communicate. So once you've gone through this first part of identifying the problem, see if there's a conflict, think about how you feel, and then take the other person's perspective. Think about how do they feel. Think about what they might be thinking. Think about what they might want. You may not know the answers to these questions, especially not right away, but if you spend some time thinking about it, you might be able to figure it out. Okay? Then we can go to part 2, which is where you talk to the other person and you share information with them. Okay? Some things to think about before you get into this situation. You need to have a private conversation with the other person. You need to be talking calmly And you need to have the conversation when you have enough time to actually deal with the problem. If you have 2 minutes between class, you might not be able to actually get your thoughts out and actually take their perspective and fix the problem. And if you do it halfway, you may make it worse. So when you're ready to have this conversation, go into the conversation listening, okay? If you aren't ready to listen, then you're not ready to talk. If you are too upset to listen to the other person's point of view, you are not going to be very successful in solving your conflict. If you are ready to listen, there are some things that you need to do to communicate to the other person and show that you're listening. Okay? Even if you're the best listener in the world, if you don't non-verbally and verbally communicate that you're listening, the other person isn't going to feel heard. And if they don't feel heard, then that's going to make resolving your conflict even more difficult. So, things that you need to do to make sure that you're heard, things that you need to do to make sure that you are showing that you're listening are you need to have good eye contact, okay? I'm looking at you with my eyes, and I see your eyes looking at me, and so I know and you know that we are listening to each other and we're communicating. This is uncomfortable sometimes, okay? So, one of the things we're going to do is we're going to practice having an uncomfortably long time of eye contact because, believe it or not, that will actually make you feel more comfortable with having eye contact. Okay? You need to uncross your arms and your legs. If I'm standing here like this, or I'm kind of like sitting like this, you're not going to feel like I'm really listening to you. And you might even feel like I don't actually care what you say. Some people cross their arms when they feel uncomfortable. We touch our bodies when we feel uncomfortable or when we feel nervous. It makes us feel better. So you need to be conscious of your body and make sure that when you're trying to be a good listener, you are giving open body language so that, it seems like you're comfortable and I'm open to you talking to me, whereas I'm not crossing myself off and I'm not turning and hiding from you, okay? You want to point your whole body towards a person and not away, okay? You want to restate what they say to you in your own words so they know that you heard them. And you don't want to be doing anything else, okay? Don't shuffle papers or rearrange things. This is something I actually have to work on because I have a really hard time sitting still. And if you have a hard time sitting still, this will be harder for you too. But if I'm sitting here playing with this stuff and you're talking, it's going to be distracting. So after you've taken the time to listen to the other person and see what their perspective was, you've been careful to be aware of your body and not be closing yourself off, to have good eye contact with each other, to restate what they're saying. The next part is giving your perspective, okay? You're gonna share, okay? There's a couple rules to sharing. Okay, the first one is that you need to be fair, which means you're gonna talk about you. You're not gonna talk about other people, you're not gonna bring other people into it, and you're not gonna bring up other arguments. Okay, this is just a recipe for disaster if you're going to talk about, well, last year you did this thing and it really made me mad. Okay, unless it's directly related to this, you shouldn't bring it up. You're going to talk about just this one thing, okay? Because if not, people are going to feel upset and then it's going to make it harder to solve your conflict, okay? You should always start with the word I. If you start with the word you, people feel defensive. They feel like you're attacking them. And they want to hide and run away, okay, because they feel like they're being accused, and at that point they're going to start saying but, and they're going to say, well, it's not like that, and they're going to start arguing with you, and then they're not going to be listening, and the whole line of communication completely breaks down, okay? So always, when you're giving your perspective, use the word I, okay? This is also uncomfortable. It's hard to do. It's hard to sometimes own how we feel and actually admit to ourselves and to the other person how you feel, and share that with them and then see what they say. That can be challenging, but that's what you have to do to resolve your conflicts and to make things get better. Okay? I have given you some sentence stems here to help you, and this is how you can structure what you're going to say to the other person. Okay? You can say, I felt blank when you blank. You can add because blank if you wanted to explain a little bit better. You don't have to add this because if you don't want to. In the future, would you please blank? Okay? I felt hurt and isolated when you were talking behind my back because I've dealt with this in the past and I'm really, really sensitive to people talking about me. In the future, would you please, if you want to talk to me about a problem we have, come to me directly and talk to me privately. Please don't bring other people into it. Okay? See how that works? I felt angry when you took my pencil because it's my favorite pencil and I don't want people stealing my pencils. In the future, would you please stay away from my stuff? If it's not yours, don't take it. Okay? So you should share. Remember to be fair. Talk about yourself and start with I. Don't start with you. It's a really good way to test whether or not you're being a good communicator. Did I start with I or did I start with you? If I say, you stole my pencil and it hurt my feelings, don't ever do it again. That comes off really differently than, I felt really angry and hurt because you took my pencil. Please don't take my pencils. Okay, you're owning your feelings. You're saying, this is how I feel. And this is what I want you to do because of how I feel. And you're not saying you, which is accusatory. Okay, so let's kind of recap for a minute. Okay, you want to resolve conflict, which is a problem, a dispute, an argument, a clash. Okay, by identifying the conflict, thinking about yourself, thinking about what you feel and what you're thinking, taking the other person's perspective, their point of view, their outlook, their stance, seeing the world through their eyes, and think about how is it that they felt? What are they thinking? What they want? And you want to spend some time actually thinking about this. Okay? Part 2, you should talk to the other person to share information. You should talk calmly in private. When you have enough time, make sure you're listening. Show you're listening. Have good eye contact. Uncross your legs. Have open body language. Restate what they say. And then you can share what you have to say by owning your feelings and saying, I felt blank when you blank because this. In the future, would you blank? Okay? And after you've communicated all of that, you can go to part 3, which is exploring solutions and planning for the future. The other person can say to you, oh, it hurt your feelings when I took your pencil. I really needed a pencil. I thought it was going to be okay. I'm sorry. I didn't realize it was going to hurt your feelings. In the future, if I need a pencil, can I ask you if I can borrow it? And you can decide at that point how you feel about it. Okay? So I know we went through a lot really quickly. Okay, this video is on YouTube, so when you go home, if you need to rewatch it, you can do that. And we will break this down more. Okay? Remember, conflict is between 2 people. Okay? So if you have more questions, you can ask me or ask your teachers, and we will continue to work on these conflicts and other issues throughout the rest of the year. So have a great day and work to resolve your conflicts, and remember to be kind to other people.